In this wild story, a man who goes by the name Hitoshi Nozaki, which we will refer to as Hitoshi. He's a 34-year-old naked man living in the forest. Before he was suddenly put in this mysterious place, he was just crossing the street until he saw a kid about to get run over by a truck. He ended up saving the kid, but it ultimately cost his life. As his life fades into darkness, he eventually wakes up in an astral plane and meets a goddess. This goddess then offers Hitoshi another chance, and wants to send him to another world. He then inquired to the goddess what would have happened if he died again. The goddess implies that in this world, he can level up his skills as much as he wants to and live a carefree life. The skills he acquires along the journey will evolve into stronger ones the more experienced he is in each encounter. The goddess also added that he can't use cheats in this world. After their conversation, the goddess uses her magic and sends Hitoshi to another world. Just a bit later, he wakes up in the forest naked. He was a bit upset that the goddess didn't even consider giving him clothes. He first collects himself, then he finds a tree to climb. And unfortunately, the land is filled with trees with no water to be seen at all. Later that day, Hitoshi strips a tree bark and makes a straw skirt with it. After making the skirt, he sets himself on a journey to traverse through the large forest. He later discovers that walking in such a place with little preparation is a difficult thing to deal with. And as soon as he got out of the bushes, he heard a noise coming from deep in the forest. He thought that there were animals near him, so he paid close attention to his surroundings and slowly walked his way through the forest. Hitoshi eventually hears a familiar sound, and there was no doubt that he actually found it. And thanks to his instincts, he has now found the most reliable resource on Earth, which is water. He then bathes himself in the river. This place is rich in water, so now he builds a base near it. He then settles himself in a very tall tree with a huge caving built in for him, as it is just a few walks away from the river. He then tended to his wounds using a little vegetation and waited for it to heal for at least 5 minutes. While he waited, he ate some fruit and thought about expanding his food options. But first, Hitoshi gathered some sticks and began making fire with it. He kept on trying until he eventually ignited a light. He then rests upon the fire as he thought about storing all his long-lasting food and planned about going for a hunt every day. But all of a sudden, his status panel appeared before him. He had a level 1 skill called karate. And for a moment Hitoshi felt like a true main character of the story. In another night, he is seen on top of a tree and watching over the trap below. He built his own device only from memory. Then a bunny with a huge nose appeared from the bushes. Hitoshi was left baffled by its appearance. Followed by that, a mysterious creature came into the area and scared off the bunny. It is then revealed that a group of goblins were out in the woods hunting as well. He was shocked to see them suddenly appear as they slowly walked towards his trap. He then thought that this would be a chance that he could get some XP points. The goblins carefully sniffed the trap, which made Hitoshi speculate their actions. The goblin then pulled out the trap and saw that there was a hole just hidden underneath the cover. After witnessing their intelligence, Hitoshi gets out of his cover and jumps the goblins from above. He uses his long stick and swings it right in the goblin's head. He puts one to sleep and moves on to the next target. He knocks out the other goblin using his powerful kick. The last goblin managed to put up a fight with him and swung its club towards Hitoshi. He was able to dodge the attack and immediately sent back a punch that was strong enough to put him down. Unfortunately, the goblin got back up roaring for its life and began swinging its club wildly. Hitoshi was trying to move away from its attacks, but he trips over a small branch. As Hitoshi loses his ground, the goblin sees its chance to strike him. Sadly for the goblin, Hitoshi lured it to his trap and got behind the goblin and knocked it out with a single karate chop to the back of its neck. He finishes the battles and comes out victorious. Later he cooked some goblin ear and received an additional level for his karate skill. Sometime later, Hitoshi is seen chasing a strange boar in the woods. It is revealed that Hitoshi has been living in this forest for about 3 months now, and his facial hair grew thicker. His level has increased to level and all his 5 senses have become sharper. He catches up to the boar and quickly grabs onto the boar's leg. He also found some chili pepper, which can be used as an insecticide or for sterilization. After taking some peppers, he sees a bunch of goblins arguing with each other. Since his level has risen up to 8, It hasn't increased since then, so he just thought about ignoring them. And all of a sudden the two goblins stopped talking. A loud roar echoed throughout the forest, which greatly shook Hitoshi in his position. A huge creature then emerges from the woods. It was a hobgoblin that stood tall and mighty compared to the fragile little goblins. The hobgoblin looked down upon its kind, then it clenched its grip and sliced both of the goblins in half. This was the first time that Hitoshi had seen something that is quite possibly stronger than him. The hobgoblin immediately spots him and runs towards Hitoshi's hiding spot. He eventually gets a good distance from the monster, but there is no telling if he actually escaped it since it has a powerful sense of smell. After the encounter, the forest he lived in was no longer safe for him. He kept on running till he reached his old house. He bids his first home farewell and sets off in his journey to find another home. He ventures through the lands, crossing rivers and climbing mountains. It has been days since he left his home, and now he's found some cover from the rain just under a rock. Hitoshi hoped that he could find some city soon and meet other people. The next day, a huge-headed feline had just walked past a mud puddle. Hitoshi emerges from it because he was trying to hide his scent from the creature. He got out of the mud and steadily walked his way through the forest. He then notices something just laying on top of the hill and suspects that it might be another goblin. He peeks through bushes and immediately finds out something even more interesting. It was revealed that Hitoshi had discovered another human. A girl was just sitting on top of the hill gathering some things. She noticed his glare and looked upon his direction. Hitoshi then starts signaling to her, but the girl warns him not to go near her. She mistook him for a goblin and immediately dashed off into the woods. Not too long after that, a roar can be heard just near him. He quickly makes his way and dashes off to catch up to the hobgoblin. He knew that going into the enemy's territory would mean for certain that there would be consequences. He gets the hobgoblin's attention and approaches it by swinging on the vines like Tarzan. He used the momentum to create a powerful knee kick and aim right at the beast's head. Thankfully, he was able to free the girl from the goblin's hold, but the kick wasn't enough to knock it down. She was visibly okay, so Hitoshi tells her to run and leave the goblin to him. He makes his stance and challenges the hobgoblin to a duel. The pressure was intense for Hitoshi as it felt like facing a bear. He considered running away also, but he was the only one who could currently face the hobgoblin. The fight begins. The beast quickly dashes to Hitoshi and swings its sword onto him. Thanks to its slow movements, Hitoshi was able to dodge it and land a punch just at the side of its torso. The beast's sturdy body was able to take Hitoshi's punch. He figured that his punch was ineffective against the huge monster, so he plans to strike it in its vital spots. He uses his knee kick to crush the hobgoblin's balls, which made it curl its legs. He begins headbutting the beast, then he punches its head and pokes it deep into its eye sockets with his finger. The hobgoblin's eye was bleeding heavily, then it started throwing punches everywhere. Hitoshi was able to block the punch, but the strike was too powerful for him to take, so he was pushed back further. He managed to get back up, but his head got a little dizzy. Another couple of strikes were launched onto him, but he dodged it swiftly. With the monster's injured eye, Hitoshi slips off from its field of view and kicks the goblin straight to the face. The beast started falling slowly. But then, it grabbed hold of its consciousness and quickly grabs Hitoshi and bit a huge chink off his shoulder. He then pokes it deep into its ear with his finger. He was immediately kicked, which sent him flying onto a tree and broke his middle finger. His consciousness began to fade away. He picks up a chili pepper and wonders if it will give him some kind of energy boost or will it just kill him now. The hobgoblin started charging towards him. Hitoshi ate the pepper just before he got his head crushed. He quickly gets his senses back and dodges the beast's attack. He then spits on its eye and blinded it. He then jumps towards the hobgoblin and squashes its face using his elbow strike and knee kick combined. And with that, the fight ended with Hitoshi emerging victorious once again. Unfortunately for him, his consciousness began to fade away again. The girl returned to him as he slowly closed his eyes. After the battle, Hitoshi wakes up in a house. His wound was now patched but has not fully healed yet. He wondered if the girl from the forest was the one who helped him. He then found out that this place belonged to humans who lived here. He was relieved to know that he was finally able to rest among the people he dreamed of getting along with. Hitoshi had missed the feeling of comfort sleeping in bed. And all of a sudden, the girl came barging through the door, which made Hitoshi freak out. She then told him to leave the place immediately because someone was coming for him. He then looked through the window and saw an angry mob. Hitoshi wondered why so many people were eager to kill him. The girl informs him that the hobgoblins' bones and skins come at a very high price for these villagers. And that's why these people wanted him dead so much, just to take the loot he collected. The leader of the mob told his people to stay back as he approached the house. The man then demanded the girl to open the door. She hushes Hitoshi for a moment as he finds out that she was the pharmacist's daughter. The man outside told her to go home and assured her that he only wants to make friends with her patient. There was this time when her mother bantered with a man and warned him that her father is a royalty from the capital. The men outside couldn't wait and wanted to bash their door instead. Hitoshi was mad that he wanted to kill them before they could get along. The pharmacist defended Hitoshi, saying there was no evidence of him killing the hobgoblin. She then gives him an ointment and instructs him to apply it to his wound 3 times a day. Hitoshi was worried about her but was told that she was just doing her duties as a pharmacist. Hitoshi overheard the conversation of the men outside the house and plans to kill both of them now. Their leader then informs them that killing the pharmacist would lead them all into trouble. He then adds that he'll take the woman and drug her if his father permits it. After hearing all the vile things the men had said, Hitoshi piled up all his rage into his fist. The girl then told him that he shouldn't push himself as she ignores everything the men were about to do. She then thanked his savior for every help he's done for her. The pharmacist then went outside and blocked the door of her house while Hitoshi escaped. He had no other choice since he was not fully healed at the moment. He went outside and escaped into the forest. He was still losing his strength and was about to fall to the ground. The men had found out that Hitoshi had escaped them through the back door. The men got a hold of the girl and beat her up. Their leader sent out his men to find the man and kill immediately. Hitoshi saw them and marked them as his next target. But for now, he gathers some strength by eating and resting plenty. Hitoshi wished that he could go home someday and go back to a normal life. The next day, the tree was caught on fire and was destroyed. He later picked some fruits from a hole he dug. He then stored all his collected food in his new base and saved up until tonight. He then looks at his status panel and sees that his level has gone up twice. He developed a new skill called Angry Waves. He began contemplating and figured that the people of this world are no different than his old world. There are people who support you and those people who don't. But they're all human beings. But once you show your true intentions, the people around you immediately look at you as some disgraceful person. For now, he must rest until his time comes. The next day, he wakes up and sees a snake greeting him kindly. He snatches the snake and prepares it for his meal later on. He then analyzes some information he gathered while he was at the pharmacist's house. The girl Ritsuchi was a person who had no family and support, which makes her an isolated individual with no one to rely on. He then decides that he'll come back to her village in just a week until he recovers his strength. While he recovers, he wishes for her safety and stay strong. A week later, Hitoshi emerges from the mud puddle and prepares himself for the time to finally go back to the village. Later in the pharmacist's house, a couple of men can be seen guarding the house and waiting for Hitoshi's arrival. Hitoshi is seen just at the side of the house and listening to the men's conversation. At the back side of the house, one guard stood by the door while holding a farming scythe. Hitoshi throws a rock as a distraction, then he uses the opportunity and jumps the man from behind. Inside the house, Hitoshi sees Ritsuchi tied up to a column. He asked her if she was all right. Ritsuchi didn't expect him to actually come back for her. He then tells her that he wants to help escape the village with her. Ritsuchi sadly declined his offer and wishes to stay with the villagers and tend to her patients. Hitoshi kept insisting, but Ritsuchi informs him that she'll soon be released and adds that every person had good in them and not everyone has to be a bad person depending on their actions. After untying her rope, he sees how the rope has severely tightened her skin to the point that it was engraved to her flesh. She then asked him how many people he saw around the house, then instructed him to leave the place immediately. But before he could, another goon enters the house and discovers them. He was quickly dealt with using Hitoshi's powerful kick, which knocked him flying out of the house. After that, a bunch of guys saw the commotion, but they were shocked seeing that a naked man had beat up one of their guys. A bit later, the mob leader confronts Hitoshi and challenges him to a fight. After ferociously beating up the hooligans in their base, he comes to a direct confrontation with their leader with his backup. Hitoshi then negotiates with them. "If you take my requests, I will let you live." The leader listened as Hitoshi requested that they not harm the pharmacist's daughter any further, and that they tell him of all the heinous crimes they had committed. The leader refuses and gets heated, telling him to suck it. Pause. The leader immediately gave orders to his men to eliminate Hitoshi right in front of them. One of the men charges and swings a punch at Hitoshi while he was idly wondering about that one classic phrase. He seized the man's arm and thought of them to be boring. He shouts something that we don't even know what it means and punches the man in his face. The man was knocked down to the ground bleeding from its nose. The henchman checks on him and the leader decides to take on Hitoshi instead. Hitoshi was in heat and felt like his body was light and ready for battle. The leader mocks him by telling him the opposite of what he said. He then challenges him to a fight of death but is interrupted by one of his henchmen. The leader's name was Philip, which we will refer to as Philip. He was interrupted when one of his henchmen told him that the other ones seemed to be dead from Hitoshi's powerful punch. After hearing the conversation, Hitoshi seemed mortified, lost in thought, since he really didn't think humans are that fragile and could only die from one punch. But after a few seconds, he clears his mind because he thought that it was okay to kill a person like that after all. The leader was enraged that Hitoshi killed a person without even using a weapon. The remaining henchmen surround him one by one with various weapons. Hitoshi carefully analyzes his enemies. He is confident that he can win against them with his karate fighting skills. He is surrounded by 8 enemies, 3 of whom have decent weapons and the rest of whom have farming tools. He believes that there is something else he can use instead of his status and skills. If nothing comes to mind, he has to be wary of getting attacked by their weapons. He's positive that he won't get hurt as long as he engages in close quarters combat. After some self-reassurance, Hitoshi rushes towards Philip with his shield. He cunningly concealed his sword within Hitoshi's perspective and tried to lunge stab Hitoshi, but he dodges. Philip thought he was about to kick his shield and prepared his guard, but Hitoshi pulled off a Brazilian kick and Philip was caught off guard with his face wide open. He took the kick to the face and immediately fell down to the ground. Another henchman with a spear instantly rushes towards behind him and tries to stab Hitoshi, but he dodges. The henchman tries to stab him again, but he dodges. While in the midst of the fight, another henchman attempts to slash him in half, but Hitoshi quickly notices and elbows the henchman in the gut. He takes him down and strikes his neck with an open hand attack. After he's finished, he readies his stance and 2 of the henchmen pussied out. The henchman with the spear takes control of the situation with his own hands. Hitoshi was confident that he could end the battle if he could push through. As the henchman lunges forward and tries to stab him again, you never learn, huh? Hitoshi seizes the spear and lets go of it the moment the henchman decides to pull against it, causing him to lose balance. The henchman took a straight punch to its face, causing a bloody mess. The remaining henchmen were terrified of his strength, causing some of them to vomit and flee out of fear, calling him a monster. Hitoshi was confused about who the monster was. After a battle of strength, Philip's father witnessed the scene with his dead son laying on the ground. The father was enraged with tears falling in his eyes and questioned Hitoshi if he's the one responsible for his death. Hitoshi retorts him back by inquiring that the father was also responsible for everything that happened. The father promptly commands a person named ISEKAI'D, who seems to be a knight, to kill Hitoshi, since the father took care of ISEKAI'D for a long time, and now it's time for him to pay back the favor. Both Hitoshi and ISEKAI'D ready their stance as they prepare themselves for battle. Hitoshi wondered what to do. He thought that it would be a hard battle against ISEKAI'D. He views his surroundings and calms his unstable breathing. After he relaxes, he carefully strategizes on what method he'll use in order to ISEKAI'D. Hitoshi notices something weird about ISEKAI'D's stance. His way of shifting his center of balance is weird, and something was off about his left leg. It reminded Hitoshi back then when he injured his meniscus. It's a vital part of your knee. Suddenly, a plan came to his mind and he wanted to test it. Hitoshi advanced towards ISEKAI'D with a sneer on his face, making a mockery of him by implying that he was afraid of an unarmed person. ISEKAI'D gets swayed by his emotions and lunges towards Hitoshi. And to his surprise, he barely dodges the attack. Hitoshi in his mind thought it would be riskier to continue, but he still decided to go with the plan. ISEKAI'D stances up to guard himself, but Hitoshi had a different plan in this scenario. He sees ISEKAI'D's leg wide open, so he rolls towards it and proceeds to do a leg lock against him. Hitoshi holds it tightly, but ISEKAI'D escapes from it. Hitoshi attempts another hold, this time by the head. He headlocks him in place and snaps his neck, causing ISEKAI'D to die, resulting in the end of the battle. He lays ISEKAI'D's body down onto the ground after. Hitoshi never expected that there'll be a day where he will kill a person by snapping their neck. Hitoshi thought business was over, but he remembered something and glared towards the side. He came in contact with Philip's father, or known as the village's mayor, sneaking around the sideline. He was responsible for the head hunting of Hitoshi. Philip's father was scared shitless, pleading for mercy. Hitoshi replied that it doesn't matter since he's the one responsible for the incident. Philip's father threatens to curse him until his death so that he'll be dragged to hell. Hitoshi retorts that he is an atheist, so he doesn't believe in any of that stuff. But he just remembered that he met a god when he just reincarnated to another world. What a surprise. Hitoshi blabbers something about, and Philip's father doesn't understand what he's currently saying. Philip's father was mad for the reason that if only the pharmacist's daughter hadn't saved him, none of this would have happened. Hitoshi got tired of the conversation and decided to finish it. Haha, get it, finish it, since he'll also finish the father? Okay, don't mind me. He slowly walks towards the father and kills him after the father lets out a scream. Hitoshi was vengeful about it since they were the one who started the incident. They stole his hobgoblin materials while also harming the pharmacist's daughter who tried to protect him. Hitoshi realizes that he forgot to take off the daughter's restraint but was suddenly called out by her instead. She was able to escape because a patient helped her in the meantime. The daughter notices the situation and Hitoshi tries to cover it up, but she already knew everything after eavesdropping on them. She told Hitoshi that both of them should leave the village as quickly as possible since they will be in deep trouble if they get caught. She also hopes for Hitoshi to bring her along. Hitoshi asks for her confirmation if it's alright. The daughter explained it was alright since she doesn't care whether the village improves or regresses due to her assistance not being needed anymore. Hitoshi thinks about it carefully. The daughter was already an enemy of the village the moment it became Hitoshi's ally. If she tries to stay in the village, she will be casted away since there's no home for her in the first place. He came to a conclusion. Hitoshi requested to carry her belongings, but she didn't want him to do it, but he insisted. A big pack of traveling luggage was laid down, and they were ready to embark. They left the village and traveled through the forest. It'll take them a few more hours before they're able to leave the forest and spot the main road. They happily chatted to each other about the recent events that happened to Hitoshi when he came to this world. He wondered if he was weird for enjoying traveling with someone for the first time after everything that just happened. It'll take 2 weeks for them to reach the cliffs, so they set aside a camp to rest for the night. He sat down and listened to her. Hitoshi was very comfortable with her since he thinks that she resembles someone important. 3 days later, they set another camp since Hitoshi thought they could skip the inn but was stuck with night duty on camping instead. While the daughter was sleeping soundly, Hitoshi observes his surroundings and remembers his conversation with the daughter. The daughter told her that the only way to check your status is through magical devices. But in Hitoshi's situation, he doesn't need any of those since he's an OP cheat character level 9999 GB. Hitoshi checked his status and was amazed at the new skills he acquired. It was Sense Presence and Conceal Presence, very self-explanatory, I would say. And to add a bit of spice, he got 2 new titles. The titles were Monster and Goblin. The reason for these titles is because of his levels and the experience points he got from killing the humans. He theorizes that if a war could happen, they could boost their levels by a lot through experience points by killing humans. The next day, Hitoshi questions the daughter if it could be possible, but she reassured him that no war would ever happen. And to add another, the same species who kill each other are unlikely to get any experience points. Oh shit, the daughter explains it would be safer to kill other species rather than hunting monsters. Hitoshi was stunned after having a sudden realization. He was shaking with fear and clenched his fist. Hitoshi realized that he wasn't human after all, and instead questioned his identity and the purpose of God for bringing him into another world. He looks above the sky as the camera pans out. This is all for the manga recap. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hope you all have a good day and peace.